Hey guys, I am going to show you a mod I recently did to my Stepmania X Pad to make it better for various tech charts, specifically ones that have lots of brackets and foot switches, just because we have East Coast FA that just came out. So one of the biggest issues I've had recently with my SMX Pad is my up arrow has been fairly undersensitive, and a lot of other people have mentioned this. The area right by the sensor here, by here or here, if you step right on it, it's usually not an issue. If it's undersensitive, you can just tweak the settings in the diagnostics tool. The issue is there's like these various dead spots, and they're usually specifically at these corners where the FSR sensors aren't. It requires a lot of pressure to be able to push that. So what's happening a lot of times for people doing things like bracket holds is if your foot is like this, as you can see here, it won't always hold, and you have to kind of shift your weight to really get it. So a lot of people have had issues with that. So I've been messing around all today to try and get something situated with it, and I've actually found a solution. So I'm going to turn this off for temporarily. What you're going to see here is I've put tape here on the sides. Now, the reason why I'm putting it on the sides and not here in the inner sensor, I originally put it on the inner sensor. The problem I was facing, it made it more sensitive. The problem I was facing was with foot switches specifically. There was enough pressure here on the inner sensor where if you try to do a foot switch, the sensitivity wouldn't go down in time, so it would still register as it being held by the time you hit the second foot switch, even though the other sensors would change. So the reason why I'm putting it on these sides is it's gonna make these sides more sensitive, but if you're doing foot switches, you're usually gonna hit one side and then go to the other, so you'll do like left to right or right to left. So these areas that are more sensitive, when you're raising up, you're gonna put more pressure on this other side. So by the time you hit the other side, this, let's say you're going left to right, and you start with the left sensor. By the time you're going over, this sensitivity should raise up enough that it'll be a lift note, and it won't be held by the time you hit this. And this can also be true with like really, really fast trills. There may be a little bit of issues for like a really, really fast 30-second notes. So that is why I have that. This is just double-sided masking tape. I have an example over here. All you do is you're just gonna take a thing of masking tape, you're gonna fold it together so there's no sticky side, you don't want any kind of pressure on that. And then you're gonna create two little pieces of tape, and you're just gonna attach it to these sides. And then all you're gonna do is you're gonna make sure that goes to the under part of this. So nothing sticky is gonna touch the FSR sensor. You put it on the sides just because you can't put it in the middle here because that's where the connector is. So once you do that, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna do that, screw your panel back in. So I'm gonna turn this back on. The other thing you're gonna wanna make sure you do is you wanna have your diagnostic tool on here, because if there are any, your raw values or calibrated values, if there's any pressure on there after you screw this in, you need to undo it and reapply the tape, because you do not want any kind of resting pressure. If there is resting pressure, this is actually gonna auto-calibrate. If you have the normal tool, it will actually make it less sensitive, and you don't want any kind of extra pressure on it. So you do want to have the diagnostic tool up here and make sure it doesn't show up. So I'm going to screw this back in. Usually you can tell if there's an issue by just screwing in these inner screws. So I'm going to get these in, and we're going to push this in. Push this in. And I've got my Allen wrench over here, so we're gonna tighten these up. Okay, that's tight. And again, you wanna make sure when these screws are applied, there's no extra pressure that's on here. So you'll see here with the raw values, these are gonna kind of fluctuate. As long as they're in the single digits, that's fine. There's gonna be some fluctuation there. If I go over here, I'm stepping on the arrow right now, so you're gonna see that. Same thing with the calibrated values. If you see it kind of fluctuate between like 1 and 2 and 3, you're fine. Everything's good with that. It's where if you see any kind of resting pressure, you're gonna have issues with that. I've been playing on it since I modified it. It's a lot better. One thing you may wanna do, and I'm still playing around with the sensitivity, when you apply the tape, these sides are gonna be a lot more sensitive. So let me go over here back to the diagnostic tool on the up arrow. Previously, if I had stepped here on the corner, the only thing that's gonna register is gonna be the inner sensor. Like this side sensor doesn't really register, it was always the inner sensor. Now, if you look here, my inner sensor is getting more pressure than my side left sensor is getting more pressure than my inner sensor because of its tape mod. So same thing with the right side. If I put pressure over here, it's gonna register more on that right side than the down one. So what you may wanna do is your side sensors, you wanna raise the sensitivity threshold so it takes more to trigger them, just because it's gonna be a lot easier to now trigger them. So if you set it to 200, it's a lot easier to trigger that 200 than when it was unmodded. So I'm still playing around with the sensitivity. From playing around with it right now, it's significantly better. This is something I would say you may wanna try, especially with the up arrow. Up arrow usually is the most problematic arrow a lot of people have. That's not exclusive to SMX, it's true with any other dance game pad, just because of the way your foots are, there's less pressure going onto it. But it's something worth trying. I'd recommend it. And again, this is specifically if you're trying to play tech. If you're trying to do something like stamina, you're probably not going to want to mod it this way. You're probably going to want to try and mod the inner sensors instead of the sides, but it's worth trying. So hopefully that helped.